to another edition of the Sewing Guru, and in this particular video I'm going to show you how to create and construct the front closure, which is a button closure for a pair of ladies' jeans. Now I do cover all of the different versions, which includes the zipper versions for ladies and gents and also the button closure for gents as well. But for this particular video, I'm going to show you how to do the ladies' button closure. Right, I'm just going to go over where we're at the moment, okay? Now, we have already put our pockets in, and I've already put in a zip here at the front fly. But of course, I'm not going to show you that today. I'm going to show you a button closure for ladies, okay? So, what I've done is I have cut out two small panels here, which basically relate to the left and the right side panels of the front of your jeans, okay? So I'm just going to take this out of the way so I can show you what I'm talking about here, okay? Now these two front panels are exactly the same as what we did for our pattern, okay? So this here was the pattern that I used, and as you can see, I've cut out a left and a right exactly the same as my jeans anyway. Now of course, because I altered the pattern slightly, or I altered my panels slightly, of course they are cut slightly different to the front because I lowered the crotch part for my jeans, okay? But essentially these are exactly the same. So you have here your crotch part and the front. And like before, what we did is we overlocked the fronts, okay? So we're totally where we were to start with, okay? So these are your front panels. Now I'm just going to take this pattern out of the way because I don't need this anymore now. Okay, just put that out of the way for there. So like I said, these are the two front panels. Now the ladies, what they do is they sit left over right, okay? So you've got your left panel which will sit over the right hand side panel when we're finished, and of course this will be your opening. Now what we have as well is we've got three pieces of denim here, what we use as facings and the part where the buttons go onto. So we have here an oblong strip which is going to be the facing, which will sit on the inside of the front panel, okay? So this is going to sit on the inside here. We also have, if I would just fold that in half, this would sit in there, yeah? So then our buttons would sit, or our buttonholes would sit on this part here. And of course we have another facing which sits on the front there where our buttons sit. Alright, so basically the buttons will go through the section where the buttonholes are as to close up the front fly of our denim jeans. So I'm just going to show you how I got the length and the width of these panels here. Okay, now if I just show you with some commercially bought jeans that I've got here, these here have a button front closure, and as you can see you've got your buttonholes here, the buttons here, and usually if I measure these, they are always round about 5.5 to 6 centimeters in width, with our seam allowances of course. Okay, so this is our facing part. So with our seam allowances, which is going to be 1 centimeter, this here measures 5.5, or you can go for 6 centimeters in width. Alright, and so that's how I got the width of these. So this here is the width, and of course mine measures round about 5.5 to 6 centimeters in width all the way down. Okay, so that's how we got the width. Now, to be honest with you, really the facing part should actually sit just on the straight part of the front of your panels just before it starts to bend round here for the crutch. Alright, so as you can see, mine is that length just before it bends round. And of course we now will have enough room here to put 3 buttons in place. So if I just get the 3 buttons that I'm going to be using for our jeans, you've got here the actually, there we go, they're all the same. 3 buttons which are going to be evened out when they sit in our jeans, and of course there's enough length there for our 3 buttons as a button closure. Okay, now for our part where the buttons sit onto, you need a folded double part, okay, of fabric, which is going to be the same width as your single piece. So once you have your length and width, you need to cut out 2 pieces identical in size, which are going to be double the width of this. So as you can see, if I fold this over, it's going to basically be double the width of our facing panel, like so. Okay, so when we've got that, what we need to do is we need to create our facing panel. So like I said, with ladies you've got left over right. Okay, so basically that sits over the top of there. And what we need to do is create our facing part. Okay, so you need to just put that onto the front panel, or basically the left panel. Turn this over, and of course this here is always rounded. So with some chalk, what we can do is just chalk this part here, alright, to round that off, like so. Alright, now once you've got that, you've got your rounded part. Okay, and of course with some scissors, what I can do is just cut this rounded part like so. Okay, so that there is basically the piece which fits as a facing on the front of your panel. Okay, like so. Now because our button closure has got another piece which sits just underneath there, what we need to do is we need to basically create this part underneath as well, which is going to be the part where our buttonholes are on. Okay, now what we need to do is basically, I would just press this down first in half, like so, and of course that's going to sit in there like so. So what we need to do now is we need to now insert our buttonholes into this piece here. So what you need to do is you've got to allow for the seam allowance for the front of your panel. If I just turn this over, okay, so you need to allow for the seam allowance for the front of your panel where your waistband's going to go on to. So of course that's there, you're going to have seam allowance for your waistband, so I'm just going to put a pin there. Okay, and now we need to just find out where our buttons are going to be. Now with these commercially bought jeans, I've got like a guide which I can show you. Okay, so the first buttonhole, it's on this side. So you've got your seam allowance, of course, because this facing goes into the waistband. And the first buttonhole is going to start 4 centimeters down, and then each other one is going to be 3 centimeters apart. Okay, so what you can do is just mark this on here, so you've got 4 centimeters down. So with your chalk, just mark this here with your chalk on there, like so. Actually, what you need to do is just mark it so that you know you're going to be putting the buttonholes on the right side. So of course that is going to be like so. So basically I've just marked that on the wrong side. So make sure that this rounded part here is facing outwards, because of course that's what that is, okay? And just mark it on there. So we'll start again. So 4 centimeters down for our first buttonhole marking, like so, and then from there 3 centimeters down for every buttonhole. So there's our markings for the buttonholes. Now buttonholes usually sit a centimetre from the edge. Okay, as you can see we have there, which is a centimetre from the edge for our first buttonhole, as you can see. So that is where we need to mark our marking for the buttonhole there, a centimetre in here and a centimetre in here. Now our buttonholes are going to be in length 2.5 centimetres fully. So you need to mark that back 2.5 and 2.5 and 2.5. So as you can see, we've got now the markings for our buttonholes on here. So this is going to be the buttonhole here, here and here. Alright? And what you need to do now is just put your buttonholes in place and do it in the same colour thread as you're using as a top stitching. Alright, so put a buttonhole here, one here and one here. So as you can see, I've put my buttonholes in here, okay, and if you look at that, the button is going to easily fit in this buttonhole, no problem at all. So the next part, when you're happy with your buttonholes, what you need to do is open these up. Okay, so just with an unpicker, what we can do is just open these up. Like so. And here as well. And here. Like so. And with some, I like to use just small embroidery scissors because these are really sharp and they're really good for cutting open buttonholes. What we need to do, because this is a keyhole buttonhole, is we need to just snip the shape of the buttonhole out. Okay, so just snip the keyhole out. Like so. And here as well. I mean, in the industry what happens is that a knife comes down the shape of a keyhole and just cuts it in one go. It's like bang, straight through there, you know. It's in the industry it's really easy in the industry, but of course we don't have, or I don't have the privilege of using a keyhole buttonhole at the moment, so I'm just showing the easiest way to do this. Okay, so basically just get rid of all of that, and when you're happy with that, I've got some glue which is called fray check, and what this does is you just put this onto the buttonhole and it will just prevent it from fraying. It's like a kind of a glue. Okay, now this isn't coming out, so basically what we need to do is just get a pin and just press the end, making sure that the end is open, and then the glue should just come out, no problem at all. Oh yeah, there we go. And just do that for all of your buttonholes. Just put a bit of fray check on there, like that. And here as well. Actually just cut off all of the little excess pieces like that. And fray check on there. There we go. Okay, so now that we've done that and we're happy now with our buttonholes, we need to basically produce this so that it fits onto our facing. Now this is our facing panel, which fits under there like so, and of course this here is going to be the buttonholes which are going to sit under there, and of course this is what it's going to look like when you open it. Oh, that'll be attached to that, and then this will be open here. So the next thing is what we need to do is position everything as if it's going to lie. Okay, so that would go on there like so, and then our buttons and buttonholes would sit, or our buttonhole piece would sit there. Okay, so keep that hold of that like that, and what we need to do is make sure that this facing part has got a seam allowance of about 1 centimetre further over. So obviously this is going to be wider now, and we need to slit this in place. So with some chalk, just mark this here so it becomes the same size as you can see, and just cut that. Round like so. Okay, so what happens is that fits on there and this fits there, and when you've done that, what you need to do is you need to overlock. I'll just make sure that this is correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so you've got your seam allowance here of 1 centimetre, which of course is going to attach onto here. So what you need to do is overlock from here around to this point here, of course catching both of these in place. Okay, so overlock from here round to this point here. So I've overlocked around here, catching both of these facings in place, and of course one has got this seam allowance. So when you've done that, it's time to put this facing onto this panel here. Okay, now like I say, it's the left. Ladies has left over right. Okay, so the left panel sits over the top of the right. So this facing part needs to go onto our left panel like so, as you can see. So what will happen is that will be attached to there, and then there's our buttonholes. Okay, so simply what we need to do is just attach that onto there. So if I just pin, just make sure that all this is lying flat, so just pin this on here, and of course your pins are going to be like a kind of a gauge as well, so that you don't go over this. Alright, and what will happen is that when that is attached onto there, that'll go around and sit in there like so, as you can see. So that there is that facing part forming. So what you need to do is stitch from here to this point here, but be very careful that you don't catch this in. Alright, you're only basically stitching this facing part down. Alright, and you can feel it as you go, because this has got this seam allowance. Alright, so you're stitching from here down to this point right here. Right, so I've stitched from here to here and caught all this in place, but of course this now is loose with this attached, this facing part attached to this panel here, okay, the left hand panel. So the next part is you need to get your right hand panel and have the right side facing each other, and you've got to make sure that the top panels are aligned, alright? So the tops of the panels need to be aligned here, okay, and have it slightly further back, okay, so you can see the stitching that you've just done for attaching this facing part on. And what we're doing is we're going to be snipping a small notch at the bottom of where you stitched to here with the facing panel, and you're snipping this small notch into the right hand panel only, alright? So just snip that about a centimetre in, a centimetre width, like so, okay? Or the width that you always sew your seam allowances with, alright? And that's just this panel, okay? So just the right hand panel only, where you've just got this little snip. So when you've done that, you can take this right hand panel out of the way, and we're just going to press this facing part down. Now you just need to press everything flat and make sure that this part here with the buttonholes is actually slightly further back, so that it's out of the way, so that on the proper side you don't see any seams gaping or anything gaping through, okay? So just make sure that this is just pressed back just very slightly. So just press that, like so. And just keep pressing this seam round with your centimetre seam allowance, okay? So it's going to be pressed back about a centimetre, as you can see here, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm going to be producing a flat felled seam. Now with denim jeans, if I just show you with these commercially bought jeans, a flat felled seam is basically a seam which interlocks in itself to basically make the raw edges of the seam disappear, okay? As you can see, all of the raw edges have disappeared within themselves, and how it works is that the seam just sits interlocked like that, it's pressed down, and then you've got your double row of stitching to basically keep that all in place. So that there is known as a flat felled seam, and what we're doing here is that's what we're going to be creating for our jeans. So once you've pressed that down, the next part is we're just going to attach our other panel, our right hand side panel, in there. So just make sure that it's really snug up to this here inside there, right? And we can just make sure that that there with the notch is just out of the way. Okay, so when you're happy with that, I mean, you can put some pins in as well. Like so. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be top stitching from the notch round here to this point here, okay? You're not stitching on the edge, you're stitching on the overlocked seam of your crotch part of the right hand panel, and you're going through all of the seams, okay, to create this flat felled seam. So use the top stitching colour that you're going to be doing with your jeans. So we're stitching from here round to this point here. So as you can see, we've produced this top stitching around here. Okay, so if I turn this over, you can see it, that it's inside, okay, around the crotch part. And the next thing what we need to do, so as you can see, that there is now forming, yeah? So this here will be around the crotch, and this here is where our buttonholes are, so you can see that our front closure is now starting to form. So what we need to do as well now is create a top stitching on this side only, okay? So I'm just going to put a single row of top stitching along here, okay, to keep all this flat, okay? So you can just press this again making sure that this seam is really, really nice and it's out of the way, like so. Okay, and what we're doing is make sure you miss this, and we're top stitching from here. So the stitching that you've just done, we're top stitching now on the edge from this point all the way along up to the top, basically catching only this top facing part in, not the part with the buttonholes. So from here all the way to here. So as you can see, I've top stitched along here, okay, only catching in this facing part, and this is now out of the way, okay. And what we need to do now is just basically carry on this flat felled seam onto this panel here, okay. So if I just press this, like so, this here is going to be our flat felled seam. Now when this is stitched down, as you can see, if I turn this over, our seam, our raw edges are all inside each other and they're rolled up inside. So the next part is, what you need to do is stitch so that basically it makes this top stitching continue along round to this point here, okay. But make sure that it's all nicely taut like so, and then you can top stitch it down, but make sure that this is all nice and flat and out of the way, okay. And at this point here, you've got to make sure that the front of your jeans are straight, okay. So make sure that they're going to be a nice straight line for your closure, okay, because if you've got them off, if you stitch like that and you've got it off balance, it causes this to just sit further back. So make sure that this is nicely straight, and what you can do is you can measure that now here and just put a pin in there just to keep that straight, okay, like so. So what you're doing is you're stitching from here to this point right here. So as you can see, we've basically carried this stitching on all the way along this crutch part to finish it all off. Okay, now this pin here as well, to keep it straight, I can just take that out now. And as you can see, our front closure is now starting to form. Now this was our notch, so what it does is it basically gives room so that all this is going to lie flat for our next facing part. So this brings us now over to our final facing piece, and what we're doing is, if you can imagine, this here is going to sit in there like so, and our buttons are going to be attached to that so that it can go through the buttonholes. But what we need to do is we need to just basically make this up first. So with right sides together like so, just put a pin here and a pin here as well, just to keep all this nice and straight, okay. What we're doing is we're stitching a centimetre in from this point here to this point here. Right, so when you've done that and you've stitched across there, you can just take these pins out because they were just holding it in place. What we can do is just snip the corner here, like so, and just bag this out, okay. So just turn it the right way through and just really nicely get into the corner there like so, as you can see. And when you're happy with that, what you need to do is just press this now flat, just to neaten it up. Just to neaten it up like that. Okay? And what you need to do then is, when you're happy with that, what we're doing is we're just overlocking from here to this point here to get rid of all of these raw frayed edges, but we're leaving the top open. Alright, so overlock from here to this point right here. So when you've overlocked across here, you should have, with this facing part, it's closed at this side and it is open at this side. Okay, so just press that down like so. And what we're doing is we're going to be simply attaching the facing panel into there. So what you need to do is, of course, this is an overlocked edge as well of the right hand panel, okay, of the front, and you just need to attach this facing into there. So just basically place this facing in there like so. And of course, obviously you've got to have your opening to the top of the denim jeans where your waistband is going to be, and the other side is closed. Okay, so as you can see, I'll just position all this correct. When that's sewn in, that will sit like so, and then this will be able to just sit there as a closure. Alright, so that's where we're at now. So you basically need to stitch from here to here, but don't stitch right to the edge, okay, where your notch is, otherwise it's going to be too far over and there's not going to be enough overlap, you see, when this closes. So I would stitch about halfway in, alright, about here. So stitch from here to this point here. Okay, so as you can see, I've stitched from here to here, and we've now attached this facing in place. So just give this a press like so. Okay, and the next part is we're going to be top stitching from here right on the edge to keep all this flat. Okay, so right on the edge of the seam from here to this point here. Okay, so that's that. And when you've done that, okay, because you can do this all at the same time, what we can do now is attach this part in place. Alright, so what we're simply doing is we're going to be creating a double row of top stitching so it comes out at the front. So what that's going to do is, if I show you with this jeans here, the front fly has always got top stitching and then it's rounded off towards the bottom here. Okay, so that's what we're going to be creating at this point here. So make sure all this is flat like so. I mean, you can even put some pins in here just to keep this nice and flat. Okay, and put another one over here, so then this is definitely not going to move. Okay, and we're top stitching from this point here right round to this point here, and then we're going to be doing another row of top stitching which will go along. It will go over your buttonholes. Now don't worry about that, but make sure that of course there is still enough gap so that you can get your button through the buttonhole. So obviously if you stitch to this point here, it's still fine because your button is going to go through there. Okay, so we're stitching from here round all the way along so that it's in line to this row of top stitching that you'll do here, and then that will go into this point right here. So as you can see, we've done a top stitching down here to keep all of this facing nice and flat, and we've top stitched a double row around here to keep the fly flat. So the next bit is basically now we're finishing off the fly, and we're going to keep all of this now completely flat and prevent it from these bits from flapping around. So what we need to do is just carry on the stitching from here, up here, across here, and then down to there, and that basically just secures all of that. And then about here, what you need to do is just do a few rows of stitches across there, and what that does is it just basically holds all this in place. Okay, so we're top stitching across here and also along this part right here. So there's our top stitching complete here, and also the few bits of back tacks, and what that's done is it's just basically secured everything in place, and that is all nicely laying flat. Okay, so that is the front fly, and you've got your buttonholes here, and of course what you do is you're going to be putting your buttons in here in position with your buttonholes to finish all that off. And I mean, you can do that at the end if you like. But that's it. That is how you create the button closure for a lady's pair of denim jeans.